Chapter 2.
2. Day 2. The late morning was crisp and bright. Everyone was woken up by a car on the road. It didn't stop. It carried on past them, but by that time everyone who had a front-facing window was at the glass looking out. Slowly they filed downstairs and sat in the bar. Çhris emerged about half an hour later from the kitchen. Good breakfast for everyone. I have some perishables we can't take with us. We might as well use them up. Enjoy it. It will be the last fresh breakfast for a while. He came out carrying a couple of loaded plates and put them down in front of Brand and Çhris. Don't worry the rest of you, plenty to go around. Salt and pepper and other condiments are on the end of the bar. Grab yourself some cutlery while you are there. He turned and disappeared back into the kitchen. Kyle and Storm were sitting at the next table along from them. Recco moved across to sit with them. So how did you sleep? Storm smiled. Very well, thank you. Surprisingly well. Recco smiled back. Well, we all know we are in very good hands with Frank here. We'll get through, and I know my engines. Matt there is good enough now to back me up, and we have Steve. If any young lady turns up on the road and causes us trouble, we will know who to call. He'll either deal with her or date her and break her heart. Won't you, you young Casanova? Steve was blushing so deeply he almost matched the curtains. He looked down at his feet and shook his head. I wish you wouldn't pick on me, Recco. Recco laughed. I don't pick on you. I like you. That is why I fun with you. Don't worry if any beautiful young women turn up on the road, I will be keeping them all for myself. He threw his shoulders back and swung his hair around a little. They all love my Mediterranean charm and roguish good looks. Matt laughed. Until they get to know you. Recco pretended to look hurt. That was cruel and unkind. What would you know? Didn't I pull that beautiful blonde in the nightclub last week? Matt smiled. No, you didn't. She asked you for a light on her way past to the ladies. Recco coughed. Anyone for coffee? I could fetch some from the kitchen. Faces looked up expectantly, and Recco left the room and went out to the kitchen. In the kitchen, Çhris was finishing 2 more plates. Hey Recco, could you take these in for me? Recco looked down. I will help gladly, but don't you think I'm going to bear the brunt of the Italian waiter jokes if I do? Çhris smiled at him. Recco smiled back. All right, I'll take the food in. An order. Çhris handed the plates over. Well, my guess is that Matt isn't going to get served first now, is he? Recco's smile was more genuine. No, I don't suppose he is. Recco had just put the plates down when there was a sound out on the road. A gang of motorcycle riders had pulled up outside, instigating a flurry of activity inside. Suddenly everyone was on their feet and looking for something that would vaguely do as a weapon. Brand put his hand up, palm facing them. Now you are jumping to conclusions here. So they ride bikes and wear colors, big deal. Matt was peering around the curtain. So are you going out to face them? Brand took a deep breath. I am. He went to the door and stepped out into the hallway, shutting the door behind him. Çhris followed him and shut the door behind him as he stepped outside. He jumped slightly when she turned the key in the lock. He walked across the car park and up to the bikers. They were all wearing matching worn-in black jackets with skulls on the front. They had patches covering their backs. The one on the Harley-Davidson fat boy at the front got off his bike and strode towards Brand. He was about 1.5 feet shorter, but definitely more than twice as wide. Brand took a deep breath. "Have you been traveling long?" The biker grunted. "You got food?" Brand tried to smile. Then he noticed that the jacket didn't fit the biker like it should. He looked over at the bike and noticed there was dried blood on the chrome petrol tank. Not much. Business was slack, so the owner didn't stock up. Another phony biker got off his bike. He kicked the support down and rested the bike on it. The others followed suit. Brand backed away a little, which was enough to convince Frank that there was trouble. He went to the door and pushed Çhris out of the way. She had taken the key out of the lock and had it in her hand. He glared at her. She backed away. "We don't want to let those people in here." Frank glared at her even harder and towered over her. "Give me that key or I will take it from you." She handed over the key and he opened the door just as Brand hit the floor. He had been hit by a crowbar the second biker had pulled from across his shoulders. Frank didn't hesitate. He ran across the car park at a remarkable speed before the bikers realized what was happening. He took a flying leap that ended with a kick that knocked the biker with the bar backwards into his bike. Other bikes toppled as well as they had stopped close together. Those who hadn't yet got off of their bikes struggled to get up. The others backed off. A biker who had been talking to Brand turned on Frank. He wore a large silver skull medallion. "Hey Ninja Grandad, you had better back off if you know what is good for you." Frank was helping Brand up. Brand was holding his head and looked dazed. Blood was pouring from the open wound. Everyone ran from the bar to help, leaving Çhris to hold the door. They skidded to a halt in front of the bikers. Storm stepped forwards between Frank, Brand and the bikers. This gave Frank time to get Brand out of the way. "Leave us and go." Medallion Man pulled himself up to his full height, which wasn't much taller than her. He was shaven bald, slight stubble showing where his actual hairline was. His jacket was open and clearly didn't fit him. It was much too small for his chubby physique, although it fitted well on the shoulders. It was the most ornate of the jackets though, as it had chains hanging on the shoulders. He rubbed a grubby hand over his shiny head as if smoothing down his non-existent hair. "Well, now it is much more interesting that we stay. I'd like to get myself a piece of that. Come on, darling, what say I leave you in one piece and you reward me with your services?" Storm smiled. "Have this piece then." Her mind was racing, but she didn't feel fear as such. She was burying it in ideas of what to do, what she could manage, and then her mind went blank. Only one solution presented itself. She was within reach as he rushed her, and she kicked him with the toe of her Dr. Martin boot between his legs as fast and as hard as she could. As he crumpled to the ground, she regained her balance and came around with her other leg and kicked him on the side of the head, which knocked him to the floor. Now anyone else think that they fancy a piece? She looked towards the bikers. Those who had not missed it as they were still struggling to pick their bikes up were obviously wincing in sympathy with their fallen comrade. Some of them who had managed to pick their bikes up were getting on them ready to go. The roar of their engines starting had a visible effect on those who were involved in fighting what they had believed were easy targets. The bikers who were not preparing to leave pulled out knives, crowbars and various other weapons they had concealed under their jackets. They didn't look as confident now though. 5 of them held back, leaving their options open to get back to their bikes. Brand had staggered away back to the pub as Frank found himself facing 2 of them. He backed away and balanced himself, egging them on with a beckoning hand. They hesitated for a moment as if thinking about it, and then they charged him. He stepped forward and aside from one with lightning speed and hit the other square in the stomach with his fist, winding him. As he bent over, Frank threw his elbow down on the back of his neck. There was a frightening crunch and the man fell to the ground, unable to move. The second man was just regaining his balance as he had run past, but when he turned he realized he was no longer carrying his knife. Frank has smoothly removed it. As he turned, Frank was advancing on him with the blade in his hand and drove it straight into the stunned man's heart for a clean kill. His eyes went blank and he slid to the ground in slow motion. Storm now faced to herself. The one who was still grabbing his assets and cursing wasn't too much of a threat yet, but the second who charged her, a tall thin man with a long mustache and Mexican features, his nostrils flaring, was definitely bigger than her, and she evaluated that he was a lot stronger. All that was running through her mind was that her self-defense teacher had told her. Escape and evasion, look for a weakness, don't be nice and use every trick in the book. She leapt nimbly out of the way and brought her foot around so that he tripped over it and rolled helplessly along the ground. She then leapt forwards and jumped on him like a trampoline before bouncing off and landing to turn and face him. He was clutching his stomach where she had landed with full force. Steve ran in from the side and caught a short and very scrawny fake biker in a huge jacket as he went past him to get to Matt. He kicked him hard in the leg, which slowed the man down enough for Matt to hit him with a frying pan on the head. The man looked shocked, then fell to the ground and they both sat on him. Recco was facing off a tall dark-haired biker who was waving a knife at him. The man's face was weather-beaten and scarred. His greasy black hair was tied back in a ponytail which was tucked down the back of his leather jacket. The jacket was obviously too small for him, and his beer belly protruded, contained only be a grubby white t-shirt and his saggy jeans, which were tied up with a belt that was straining at the buckle on the last hole. The man grinned. "Come on, pretty boy, we'll see what you look like with a few slashes." He was slashing frantically at head height and Recco was doing all he could to keep himself out of the way. Recco backed away and with amazing agility managed to keep dodging. He felt the air displaced as the knife came within a whisker of his face. His usual outward humor was long gone, replaced by sheer blind terror. His mind was racing. Plenty of comments went to mind, most of them obscene. Some of them were funny, but mostly he was just focused on keeping that blade away from his face. The man laughed. clearly enjoying the look of horror on Recco's face. Then that smell from his face as the man choked and stopped in mid-movement. Frank had him from behind with a hand around his neck and deftly twisted his head and broke his neck. The man slipped lifelessly to the ground. Storm sprinted to where Chris was backing away from another biker with a knife. If it wasn't for the jacket, this man would have been Mr. Bland. He had mousy, greasy, shoulder-length hair, a grey shirt and old-fashioned, high-waisted, crimp-clean trousers. He was running full pelt after Chris, shouting, "Come here, girlie, girlie." She tried to run backwards, tripped, and fell, and he was on her. He slashed with his knife, catching her across the stomach. She screamed at the top of her voice, which stunned him momentarily. Storm caught up with him almost at the same time, and without losing a stride she kicked him in the head as he bore down on Chris. She knocked him sideways. She jumped over Chris and followed up as he tried to crawl away, and carried on kicking him until Frank ran over and stabbed the biker with a clean killing blow. Brand staggered over to Chris, almost falling on her as his legs gave out underneath him. She was holding her stomach as blood ran between her fingers. Storm took off her jacket and handed it to Brand. "Hold it to the wound, stop the bleeding. We've got to get her to a hospital, sod the plan, we could lose her." Brand looked up at her hopelessly. Storm grabbed him by the shoulder and pulled him from where he stood over Chris. She helped him to get the prone woman into a position where they could try to stem the flow of blood. "Come on, it's a stomach wound. Moments count. You could do with some medical assistance as well. Focus, man, focus." Kyle had just finished kicking a muscular and handsome fake biker who had been singing a chain before Kyle had deftly reached up and grabbed it. He pulled the biker off balance, and as he fell, he'd started kicking him. Frank walked over and without breaking his stride finished him off by deftly breaking the man's neck. Frank turned and evaluated the situation. "Kyle, get your van, we need to get them to a hospital." Kyle dropped the chain and ran to get the van from around the back as Frank threw him the keys and he caught them mid-run. Moments later he screamed around the corner, did a handbrake turn and stopped in a cloud of dust and loose pebbles. Storm and Brand were half carrying Chris. They propped her up against the van and Storm got in and Brand lifted Chris up and got in behind her. They strapped themselves in and Kyle put his foot to the floor. Kyle had hurriedly thrown everything out of the van to make room for them. Brand opened the window as they went off down the road and shouted, "We'll be back as soon as we can." He wound the window up and he put his arm around Chris, who was crying and gripping the jacket to her wounded stomach. She screamed in pain as Kyle took a corner sharply. Kyle was concentrating on the road. "Sorry, but it is necessary. I saw a hospital sign a way back. It's probably going to be chaos there, but we must give it a go. Now please, I've got to concentrate. I've fixed this old crate up, but I'm not too sure how well she'll hold up under this sort of pressure." The road was empty of moving traffic and there were very few people about. Vehicles were littered all over the road and Kyle had to wind his way around them. The road was mostly clear. Those who were on the road were walking with possessions tied to their backs in bundles or pulling huge suitcases on wheels. They hardly looked up when they saw the van coming at speed. It was a couple of miles to the hospital and some of it was down small lanes, but soon enough they drove into the car park, which looked like a war zone. Bodies were laying everywhere where people had tried to get to the hospital and died on the way. A lone orderly was trying to remove the bodies, his gurney loaded up with as many as he could get on there. Kyle didn't slow down. He headed straight to A&E and drove in under the ambulance bay. He screeched on the brakes and the van skidded to a halt. Brand leapt O2 and lifted Chris down. Storm jumped down behind them and shut the door behind her. Kyle locked it. The window was down, and he called out, "Good luck. I'm going to stay with the van so we don't lose it." Storm was already disappearing off with Brand and Chris through the swing doors. She raised her hand in acknowledgement as the door swung shut behind her and they disappeared into the hospital. Inside the hospital there were people everywhere in various states of being treated. Most were bandaged and sat on whatever they could find, looking stunned, their loved ones beside them holding coats, bags and generally trying to comfort them. A young doctor ran over to them when he saw the trail of blood that Chris was leaving. He pulled the coat away and checked out the wound. Immediately he called for a gurney. The orderly who came with it lifted Chris onto the bed despite her protestations not to touch her. She screamed and tried to fight them all off, but they wheeled her off to a curtained cubicle where the doctor examined her. She was still crying when he injected her arm and she relaxed and stared up at the ceiling. The doctor relaxed as well. "Good, now we can have a good look at her." He pulled up her shirt and revealed the gash in her stomach. He bent down and pulled it apart. It could have been a lot worse. Thankfully it is just superficial. I won't even bother to ask how this happened. A nightmare day for everyone. A few stitches and she will be fine. You on the other hand had better sit down. Head wounds can be lethal and even if you feel okay you might have a concussion. Brand sat down and realized that he was finding it hard to see as the blood was running into his eyes. Storm began wiping it away with a damp paper towel. The doctor was busy cleaning up Chris' wound. "Very good, she's a very lucky little lady. She may not get too much of a scar. I'll see if we can come up with a better option to stitching. Lay there and don't move." He was talking to himself. Chris was still under the influence of the injection. Chris moaned. She was so strongly sedated that she couldn't have moved if she had wanted to. Brand choked as the blood ran into his mouth. "What about the baby?" The doctor froze. "Now that changes things. Why didn't you tell me that straight away? How far gone is she? We'd better do some tests." Chris moaned and raised her hand to try and push the doctor away. Brand grabbed her hand and held it. Brand thought for a moment. "She told me last night that she was 3 months. She hadn't told me before as she wanted to be sure." The doctor looked at him and raised an eyebrow. "If you both would like to leave the cubicle, and someone will help you, I'll do some tests and come and find you." Brand stood up. He was feeling dizzy and the floor nearly came up to meet him. Storm caught his arm and almost physically carried him to the next cubicle, which was made ready for him. A A doctor carrying a clipboard followed them in and pulled the curtain. He looked into Brand's eyes and checked his retinal reflexes. Now lay down on here and we'll get that cleaned up and see what we're dealing with. Brand sat on the gurney and swiveled around just as the world turned black. He fell back onto the gurney and the doctor was immediately checking his vital signs. He's passed out, probably due to shock and blood loss. Head wounds do bleed a lot. It does happen. Hold his hand if you want to, my dear. He'll be more reassured when he comes around and I'm sure you'll be more assured as well. I'm just going to give him some anesthetic and get that wound sorted out. Handsome lad, I'll stick it rather than stitch it. Storm sat on the bed holding Brand's hand. She couldn't help thinking about how Çhris was 3 months pregnant with his baby. Inside she felt deeply guilty for her thoughts over the past night, the daydreams she had had and her hopes that their relationship may not have been a permanent one. She was focused on what the doctor was doing. There were so many voices in the room, in all the cubicles, that it was hard to focus on what anyone was saying. People were screaming and crying, trolleys were being wheeled up and down the corridor and all manner of other sounds added to the cacophony. The doctor had just about finished his masterpiece when Brand came around. At the same time the doctor who had been treating Çhris stepped into the cubicle. I've given her an anesthetic to numb the pain while we deal with that cut properly. She's a pretty girl and I'm sure she doesn't want me to turn her into Frankenstein's monster with my stitching. A skin patch will do the job far better, but that will take minor surgery as we have to make sure she doesn't move while it sets. Brand grabbed the doctor's arm. Would surgery harm the baby? The doctor looked down at him, looking sympathetic. Your baby? Brand nodded. The doctor looked gravely at him. I am sorry, son. I don't know how to put this, but there is no baby. Brand looked horrified. You mean she's lost the baby? The doctor shook his head. I mean there was no baby. I have carried out an examination and I have done tests to double-check as best I can. According to her hormone level and from the blood test it would appear that she is taking contraception. I have her hand back here. I am not at liberty to open it, but you may wish to take the responsibility and have a look inside. Brand's face looked like thunder. He leaned over and snatched the offered bag from the doctor's hand. He opened it and tipped the contents out onto the bed. The distinctive silver packet with tablets set out day by that was there. He picked it up and looked at it in disbelief. What a bitch. She has been taking them up until the day she told me. Doctor, can you tell me? Could she have got pregnant last night? The doctor shook his head. It takes time for the cycle to settle down. Brand went to get up. Storm caught his arm and physically held him onto the bed. Where are you going? Brand looked up at her. I'm going. Come on, we're going. Storm froze. What do you mean we're going? What about Çhris? Brand smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I don't care where she goes, but she is not coming with us. I've had enough of her manipulating me, and this is one trick too far. The doctor shook his head. She was a foolish child, but everyone makes mistakes. I'm sure this is something you should talk about. These are difficult times. Perhaps she was scared of losing you. Do you want to speak to her? We can arrange a private room for you. Unfortunately, we are under extreme pressure here and I really must move on to another patient. Storm looked up at him. Thank you for all you've done. I'll look after him. The doctor smiled kindly at her. The body language between them was not lost on him. Good luck with everything. He turned and left. The doctor in the room had been standing open-mouthed. Well, I never. Now we must focus on you. It is possible you have a concussion. I would say that it is highly likely. We are going to have to keep you in for observation. Brand grabbed the doctor's arm. I cannot stay, we have to go. The doctor looked at him quizzically. Go where? Brand shut his mouth with a snap. It doesn't matter where. The doctor looked at him. Did you get a message? Brand looked at the young doctor. I did. Did you? What did it say? The doctor smiled. Go to this location if you want to live or something like that. I've got the printout in my locker. I'm about to finish my shift and I was going to head off. If I come with you I can monitor your situation and if there are complications I am sure I could help. I know I'm needed here but the message did say urgent and that I was needed. What about Chris? Is that what her name is? If she got a message then she must be needed. Brand opened his mouth and shut it again. You must think me cruel. But neither of you know the full story. I worked for her father and she took a liking to me. I was in debt and her father bought that debt which basically meant he bought me for her. He wanted me to be with her for a little while and then make her hate me and leave so that she would return to the family and marry the man they had chosen. So if I walk away now I'll be doing my job. Storm shook her head in disbelief. How long have you been with her? Brand looked down. 5 long years. Storm stared at him. You have to be kidding me. Surely in that time you could have been man enough to sort it out. Don't you love her? Brand put his hand up to his head and the doctor deftly caught it. What is to love? She's a manipulative and demanding bitch who made my life a living hell. If her father hadn't held my sister pretty much to ransom there is no way I would have had anything to do with her. The curtain pulled back and Chris staggered through, clutching her stomach which was bleeding again. You don't need to sort it out. I think you just have. I can't believe that Daddy bought and paid for you. You are a liar. You wanted the comfortable life, the fast cars and the designer clothes. You certainly seem to be enjoying the holidays and life of leisure. Well, you may go now. The gravy train has derailed. Storm can have him. He's damaged goods. You can have him for free, bargain basement. Go on, get lost both of you. Go and find your wonderful place, it is not as if I was actually invited. Yes, that's right, I lied. I never got an invitation. Get out of my life you pretentious and vain Neanderthal. I've had enough of you drooling and grunting over me. Time I went and found myself a man with a bit of education and breeding. I don't need you anymore. She grabbed the contents of her handbag, stuffed it back inside and stormed out, punching numbers into her totally useless mobile phone. Storm was still holding Brand down. She relaxed her grip. Well, that was not at all what I expected. What do we do now? Brand sat up, held his head and fell back down again. Well, if I can ever get off this damn bed, we're going to go back to the pub and we're going to get the hell out of here before anyone else turns up and kicks the living daylights out of us. Storm smiled. Sounds like a plan. I do feel sorry for Chris in some ways. Brand laughed. I wouldn't. She's a prize bitch. You should have heard what she said about her friends and what she did to them. Part of me was too afraid over the years to say anything. Storm hesitated. Do you need to worry about what she will do? Brand took a deep breath. Oh yes, she'll have a very wicked vengeance put together for me as soon as she calms down and starts thinking about it. That is why we need to get moving. If she has seen my message, she also knows the location. Storm looked horrified. Frackin' hell. Okay, well, doctor, is he able to be moved? The doctor drew off some clear liquid into a syringe. Yes, in my opinion, if he has medical supervision, he will be fine. I don't travel alone. I have found 2 other people this morning who are going to the location. They are meeting me here in about 10 minutes. So, are we traveling together? Storm looked at Brand, who was looking decidedly dizzy. What do you think? Brand smiled. I'm a Neanderthal, I'm not supposed to think. You do it for me, pretty one. Storm smiled. Now let me think. Having a doctor along. Medical cover. Do you think I'm going to refuse? The doctor smiled. Good call. Very well. You have your doctor. At this point I should really introduce myself with a really cool name, which I don't have. Storm laughed. So who will our doctor be then? The doctor smiled, hiding his name badge. Do you have a car that works? Storm smiled. We do, a beaten-up van. It's in the car park. The doctor was putting away his equipment and making up his notes. I'll see you there in 10 then. 3.